Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on this unseasonably sunny Wednesday in Cape Town, at least. It is my pleasure to be here today with two of our foremost experts on digital literacy in this country, and I'll introduce them to you shortly. Just by way of preface, we know that our online systems are awash with fake news, myths, conspiracy theories at the best of times. But we also know that there is research internationally which strongly suggests that all of this spikes significantly in advance of elections. We are now just more than 2 weeks out from our own polls on May 29th. And I think if you open up social media and take a look at what's going on there, it is very clear that this phenomenon is playing out in South Africa as much as it has in other large democracies ahead of these elections. So what we're discussing today could not possibly be more important. What we're seeing online is misinformation about so very many aspects of the elections, from the date to how you vote, to the ballot papers, to the eligibility of candidates, to the claims being made by political parties. There is just a stunning array of myths and nonsense out there. And it's never been more important for us as ordinary citizens to be able to tell fact from fiction, which is why we are very grateful to have with us today Carina van Wyk and Kavisha Pillay. So Carina van Wyk joined Africa Check as head of education and training in May 2019. Having worked as a journalist, content developer, sub-editor, and trainer, she has 2 decades of experience in the fields of media and communications. She holds a master's degree in journalism and media studies from WITS, as part of which she conducted a research project on the impact of independent fact-checking on journalism practice in South Africa. Carina has extensive knowledge of the media landscape and experience in managing and conducting training for journalists, fact-checkers, and communicators across Africa. Carina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Kavisha Pillay is a social justice activist and the founding director of the Campaign on Digital Ethics, a nonprofit organization that focuses on the nexus between technology, human rights, and democracy. Kavisha has a background spanning over a decade in good governance and anti-corruption, and has recently built expertise on issues related to artificial intelligence and algorithmic accountability. Welcome, Kavisha.
Thanks, Rebecca.
So just to let you know, as audience members, what's going to happen here is that Kavisha and Carina are going to lead us through a kind of mini workshop. They have very kindly agreed to shorten their normal training for our benefit on how to spot misinformation online. We're going to leave about 10 minutes at the end for questions, at which point I will hop back in to moderate some of the questions from the audience. As we go along, please do feel free to pop your questions in the chat box, which you should see on your screen, and we'll take as many of them as we can when we get to the end of the session. But for now, Kavisha and Carina, over to you guys. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Kavisha Pillay, and I am the founding director of the Campaign on Digital Ethics, of CODE. And we do work at this intersection between technology, democracy, and human rights. And CODE was born this year, in this year of unprecedented year of global democracy, where more than half of the world's population will go to the polls to elect people at various levels of government. And during this year of global democracy, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and various experts in civil society organizations have raised concern about the risk that false information poses in terms of being able to conduct free and fair elections. And what we've been seeing, the more elections that take place throughout the year, the more examples of disinformation emerges, and the more complex they become, and the more difficult it becomes to tell the difference between whether or not this is real or this is fake. So false information in the context of elections and politics is not new. We know that politicians will do whatever they can to persuade voters to vote or not vote in particular ways. What is new, however, in the last decade is this our social media recommendation systems and algorithms that can specifically micro-target you based on your preferences and your likes on content that may appeal to you. And your data is then collected, and this is then used to target you with very specific information that may appeal to your biases, to your fears, that may strongly appeal to some of your emotions. This type of information is also used to lock you into various echo chambers. And this is why we're starting to see disinformation becoming a real threat to democratic processes all over the world. Now, there's ample examples, from the United States during the 2016 election where disinformation was used, and there was a sort of a viral sort of lie about a Pizzagate scandal where a sex trafficking ring was being run out of a pizzeria by prominent Democratic senators and leadership, to, allegations in the UK where anti-immigrant messaging and sentiment was being micro-targeted to people who were sort of voting in swing counties. And evidence in Brazil, India, Philippines, and even here in South Africa, we've had our fair share of engaging with this type of false information in the form of what happened during Bell Pottinger and how those types of narratives were used to polarize and divide us on issues of corruption, but also in 2021 during the July riots. And what we're seeing is that it's no longer just about your aunt sending you a WhatsApp that says, if you don't forward this chain message, your WhatsApp is going to shut down. The types of disinformation that we're starting to see has real world impact and can be quite dangerous. So given the extent and pervasiveness of false information in our society, each one of us has a role to play in trying to curb this issue. From the tech companies who have to be doing better to ensure that their platforms aren't unintentionally promoting lies and causing harm, to governments who need to try and find ways to regulate these spaces, also with the AI arms race that's currently underway, where it's so easy to create fabricated content. We need to find ways to make sure that these types of tools are not going to be used to further cause harm and polarize our societies. But also you and I and ordinary people who use digital platforms have a role to play in ensuring that we have a safer digital world. And this is why we are doing this training today, because we, as responsible digital citizens, we need to make sure that we understand how these platforms work, that we know how to critically analyze information, and that we are playing a role in terms of spotting when we spot false information, we're reporting it and we don't just continue to scroll on. So we do have a poll that's gone live in terms of being able to tell the difference, if you're able to tell the difference between dis and misinformation. And it seems that a lot of you do actually know what the difference is. But just to go back to basics, so dis and misinformation can be categorized under a broad banner of false information. And this refers to content, be it social media posts or articles, videos, or images that contain lies or falsehoods or any inaccurate information. This then is broken down into disinformation or misinformation. And disinformation is content that has been intentionally created and disseminated with the purpose of deceiving you. Whereas misinformation is content that's being shared by a user who's not aware that what they're sharing is actually a lie. So this is the differentiation between the two, and it's important that we understand this. These categories can then be broken down into further subcategories, which include satire and parody. And I know this may seem strange, but I'll explain why. Something called false context, imposter content, and fabricated content. So let's start off with satire and parody. Now, satire is originally intended to mimic real news or events, and it's sort of, a funny way to make critiques about society. But if the audience or if an individual is not aware that this is satire and that this is clearly been labeled as satire, they can then go and share this, believing that this is real, and this can be a form of misinformation. So an example that we've picked up is from a site called The Onion in the United States, and it's a satirical site. And during the 2020 elections, they were running these live election updates. Now, if you didn't know that this was satire, you'd maybe be quite shocked at what they were reporting on. So, for example, they were saying in Atlanta, Georgia, that a poll worker found the missing 11,000 votes that Trump needed behind a bookshelf. Or in Wisconsin, that voters were selecting their governors by either smashing a blue or red can of beer against their forehead. So it's meant to be funny, but if you're not completely clear and if this is not labeled, it can confuse people. The next type of false, sort of subcategory is called false context. And this involves genuine content like videos or photos or stats that is presented in a misleading context. And the original content is real, but then it's framed in a way to deceive and manipulate and to mislead you. So this is an example that was fact-checked by Africa Check, where there was a tweet that went out with this video of a lot of people walking through a city center in green, and the tweet said, it was referring to the new party in Mkhonto we Sizwe. MK is the biggest political party in SA currently. And our Africa Check went and investigated, and they found that actually this is a video from a May Day rally in the Dominican Republic. So the video is real, but they used a real video in a different and false context. We then move on to imposter content. And this involves mimicking credible sources or individuals to spread false information. So it can include fake news sites that mimic and design legitimate news sites or social media accounts that impersonate real organizations or public figures. And in the last UK election, this was the example that got picked up, where there was a fake news site that emerged that basically branded in the same way that the BBC brands, and it had a story that the general election was going to be held over 2 days, and those who were left-leaning in voting for Labour or the Liberals or the Green Party, they would vote on one day, and anybody who was conservative was going to vote on the next day. And again, if you're not sure, if you're just, going through the site and you're not looking at the URL, or you're not picking up on much more sort of different subtleties, you will then potentially be persuaded that this is a real news site. The last example that I'll give you on this in terms of the subtypes is something called fabricated content. And this is completely made up content that has no basis in fact. And it includes all forms of media or text, images, videos, and the intention is to deceive you. And what we've seen in the South African example is there was this video, this AI video of Donald Trump, who basically said that he was endorsing the Mkhonto we Sizwe party, the African National Congress of Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't represent the people. And this was being shared on social media. And this video is obviously fake and it has been fact-checked, but this is an example of pure fabricated content where everything is made up and there has no basis in fact. So this is a sort of pure, overview of the types of disinformation, false information that you will encounter. And I'm now going to hand over to Karina, who will then take you through much more practical tips on how you find how you fact check these types of information that you're coming across, how you report them, and how you can use different tips and tools in order to make sure that the information that you are sharing online is real. So thanks, Karina, over to you.
Thanks so much, Kavisha, for that introduction. It's sure going to, you'll see that some of the examples that Kavisha was referring to, I'll go into a bit more depth in my presentation. So yeah, thanks so much for that. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay. All right, so just a quick introduction to Africa Check. Africa Check is the first independent fact-checking organization on the continent. We opened our first offices in Johannesburg 12 years ago, and we've since expanded, and we do have offices in Nairobi, Kenya, Dakar, Senegal, and Lagos, Nigeria. And we do fact-checking work and training across the continent. What we basically do in a nutshell is we assess the accuracy of claims in the public domain. So claims made by public figures like politicians, by well-known organizations, claims reported on by the media. And then, as you can imagine, we also do a lot of debunking and fact-checking on social media platforms because we see a lot of dis and misinformation spread on these platforms. And what we then do is we look at publicly available data and we consult experts in order to establish whether these claims are correct or maybe incorrect or misleading. And we write up fact-checking reports that's then published on our websites, and that's also available for the media to use. So an example of a fact check that we have done recently, this was in January this year, a claim by President Cyril Ramaphosa that the government has built 4.7 million houses over the past 30 years, since 1994. And what we found is that he was actually, when we had a closer look, he was actually referring to housing opportunities and not newly built houses. And a housing opportunity can also just be a plot of land. So the total number of actually newly built houses that we found was more or less around 3.5 million. So there's quite an exaggeration there. So yeah, from 3.5 million to 4.7 million. So we found that claim to be misleading. We also do a lot of fact checking in the lead up to the elections, as you can imagine. So we fact check and verify claims made in the biggest political parties' election manifestos, to see if the statements they are making are correct or misleading, exaggerated, or completely incorrect in some cases. So just a quick quiz to get us started. So we've been seeing an increase in dis and misinformation related to politics, related to the elections, as Rebecca was mentioning earlier. And one of the examples was a video that has been doing the rounds on social media, basically claiming that Mozambicans are being imported to vote in the country's May 2024 elections. And I'm going to, so you'll also get a quiz question popping up somewhere, and I'm going to just play a very short part of this video, just a snippet here or there. And I want you to think about this as I play the video and let us know if you think the video is real but used in the wrong context, whether you think it's legit, or whether you're not sure but you would like to know more. So I'm just quickly going to play a little bit, a little part of the video. Just to give you some more background, what the claims basically suggested was that these Mozambican citizens were being registered to vote in the South African elections. So let me just start playing the video.
079. Commander lana sine 54 sine agent lana njengoba nibona lento ama ID no wekuvota. It's not ID. I card loku ba register for ama votes, not ID is something else.
Okay, so it seems that they're talking to this man, explaining that they are basically manufacturing voting cards, and then the video goes on, and they move into a building where you can see some officials here, and a printer, somebody who is providing an ID photo. And then you can see some documents being printed there, and it continues. Okay, so that was then the first one. So if you can just tell us what you think of that one. And we're going to come back to these answers at the end of the session. The next one is a video that we came across recently of President Joe Biden apparently threatening to sanction South Africa if the ANC wins this year's elections. I'm going to, we're going to follow the same process. I'm going to quickly play the video. This one is much shorter. And then while I play the video, please tell us what you think, whether it's real, whether it's AI generated, or whether it's real but lacks context.
If the ANC wins the next election, we will impose immediate sanctions and declare South Africa an enemy state. The whole of the European Union will back us with this, and together we will fight for the freedom of South Africans. This is our message to the world.
Okay, so please do give us your answers. And then the last one, before we get to discussing false information during election time, the question is, if you don't vote in South Africa's elections, does your vote automatically go to the ruling party? And you've got three options. The first one, yes, that's how it works. The second one, it's an urban myth. And the third one, I don't know. If you'll please also answer that for us. Okay, so we'll get back to that at the end of the session. I'm now going to show you a few examples of the false information that we have come across over the past few months. We're looking at what we are seeing already in the lead up to the elections. And then we're also going to look at, the kind of information or the types of false dis and misinformation that we expect to see closer to election day and also on election day, based on our experience covering elections in the different countries that we work in. So just a few recent examples. And also something that you need to be on the lookout for is non-existing endorsements, often in the form of deep fake videos. Kavisha was referring to the example on the left, which was a deep fake video. It was an old video of Trump that was taken, and AI technology was used, and it was manipulated so that he appears to be saying that South Africans should vote for MK. While the one on the right-hand side was a very similar technique was used, but it was also a deepfake video, an old video of Eminem, the rapper Eminem was taken, and it was manipulated for him to appear to be saying that he supports the EFF and that South Africans should vote for the EFF. So with an example like these, the alarm bells should immediately go off. You should ask yourself, but why would a well-known American public figure, keep themselves busy with the South African election, for example? So that's one of the things that we thought about immediately when seeing these videos. Another thing to watch out for before the elections is where politicians are falsely quoted. And also fake social media profiles. That is what Kavisha referred to as imposter content. In this case, somebody actually took a screenshot from a tweet from a fake Helen Ziller account from years ago. Unfortunately, it's a bit blurry, but it was the tweet was sent on the 9th of November 2010, and it was spreading again this year, and it basically suggested that Helen Ziller said that the DA supports Israel without holding back. When we investigated, we saw that it was a fake account, also a screenshot of a very old tweet. And her name, for instance, was spelled, or her name in the handle was spelled with a double L, which is also a giveaway. So make sure that when you look at social media profiles, that they are indeed the profile that you think you're looking at. Then what we're also seeing is false information with an anti-migrant narrative. We've seen this a lot, actually, not only in the lead up to the elections, but in previous years as well. And in this case, what was suggested in this social media post was that the EFF was making fake South African IDs for migrants so that they can vote in the elections. When we fact-checked this, what we found was that this image of these fake documents was actually shared by the police after they made an arrest in 2022. They arrested a man in Hillbrow in relation to the manufacturing of false ID documents, but there was no link with any political party or the EFF whatsoever. Then also photos and videos that are used out of context. This is usually used to sort of create an impression about a certain politician or political party, or to praise them for something that they didn't do. So yeah, it can go either way. So the first example that I want to show you is an image of an open toilet without any walls. It's not enclosed at all. And the suggestion with this, and it was spreading very widely around April, was that this was the work of the ANC. What we actually found that this was a very old picture from 2009, but the picture first appeared in 2010, but it was a picture of an open public toilet installed by the DA Municipal Council in Khayelitsha in 2009. So used completely out of context. Another example is this example where a picture of the Hoover Dam in the US was spread very widely on social media, giving credit to former President Jacob Zuma, as you'll see here, but completely out of context, taken thousands of kilometers away from South Africa. So not a picture of the dam at all. And the Hoover Dam is significantly larger than the Nandoni Dam. Another thing that we're seeing is fake giveaways or scams. So no, the president is not suddenly going to start, or he wasn't giving away 10 gigs of data via these links. So you'll see that this was a scam that was spread very widely on social media platforms. And you'll see that the links for MTN, Vodacom, and Cell C are exactly the same, which was sort of a warning sign that this could definitely not be true. Then what to watch out for before and on election day. Claims that a political party has withdrawn from the elections. If you hear something like that, go and check those news sources, make sure that it is true. Claims that a politician has moved to another party. Claims about political party leaders, their health or involvement in a scandal. We saw this post basically suggesting that President Cyril Ramaphosa had a stroke and that he was in the ICU. That went out and that spread fairly widely earlier this year. And we might see similar examples now as we get closer to the elections. On election day itself, be very, very wary of photos and videos claiming to show election violence or protests. It might be to deter you to go and vote at your voting station. If you do receive an image or a video of a so-called violent protest in your area or close to your voting station, make sure that it's not an old image or video. And also check your news web pages to see if it's really true. And then also claims about people voting without having registered. There are always rumors like these. I'm not saying this won't happen and it won't be true. It's just something that you need to be on the lookout for. So if you see claims like this, ask yourself whether it's true or not and make sure that you verify it before sharing it. Claims about vote buying or election rigging. And then also what we often see, happening is like fake election results before the official results have been announced, or results from previous elections. So if you do keep an eye on the results, follow the live broadcast from the voting, the station in Pretoria, the IEC's station in voting station or counting station in Pretoria. I can't think of the official word now, but yeah, make sure that you keep your eyes on news sources for official results and don't just rely on what you see on social media. Okay, a few tips for spotting false information. Now that we've looked at the types of false information that we do come across in some examples, how would you actually spot them? So you always ask yourself certain questions when you see something on social media, when you receive a WhatsApp message. If you feel strong emotions, pause. If it makes you scared, if it makes you angry, pause before you share, verify that information before you share it. Because people who create disinformation know that they will, when they play on your emotions, we tend not to be as critical when we feel very strongly about something. So be aware of that. If it sounds too good, shocking, or unlikely to be true, it probably is. And then very, very importantly, who or what is the source? Are you looking at a WhatsApp message that's been forwarded many times where no source is indicated whatsoever? Or are you looking at the verified social media accounts or website of a news organization where a credible journalist is giving updates? And obviously you rather trust the journalist reporting than a random WhatsApp message that you in a case where you don't know where that information comes from. Then to verify social media sources, I'm just quickly going to touch on this example. This was it was still called tweets at that point in time. It was Twitter and not X yet. So this tweet that was apparently shared by the late Namibian president basically suggested that the Namibian president was going to send Namibian troops or the Namibian Defense Force to go and help Ukraine after the invasion of Russia. This was just a few days after the invasion in February 2022. And you can just imagine how scared you would be if you are in the Defense Force or you have a family member in the Defense Force and you see this tweet. And what made it worse is this tweet appeared to be shared by the Namibian newspaper. So they used the Namibian newspaper, which is the English daily newspaper in that country. They used their logo, so to make it appear as if a news source was sharing this. So what would you do in this case? You'll make sure that it really comes from that source. You'll make sure that the account that you check the account name and handle carefully. You'll see here that on the fake account, the handle was the Namibian News Owl, while this handle that you see here is the real Namibian handle. That said, I have to add a disclaimer with the changes at Twitter. You can't trust that blue tick. You can't trust it in the same way that we did. But you can also go to the Namibians' website to see if they've reported on it. And then, of course, who else is sharing the claim? Because if it's such a big story, then all the media houses in Namibia would probably be sharing this. And you can also go and look at official government pages, for example, because a government won't make an announcement, it's very, very unlikely that they'll make an official announcement on Twitter in this way and not have it on their official platforms. And then a last tip, but it comes with a very, very big disclaimer. I'm not saying trust comments on social media, but sometimes you can have a look at the comments on social media because people might call someone out for sharing fake news. They might say, you know, have you seen this as fake, or here's a fact check that has been done on this. So just to see if there are any doubts about whether the information is true or not, and then you just use that as your starting point and then investigate further. Cross-referencing is also very important. So if you suspect that you're looking at false information, so somebody is sharing false information on X, go and have a look at their Facebook accounts, have a look at their Instagram and TikTok accounts, and also the rest of, you know, so their online profile, to see if they often share dodgy information. Just so that you can get an idea of how trustworthy this person's information usually is. What many people don't know is that with an image or a video, you can basically verify them by searching for images on the internet. So many of us only use Google to search for a certain keyword or a phrase to get some results. But what you can do is, if you receive, say, for instance, an image on WhatsApp, and you want to see, but was this really taken this morning, or, you know, was it taken 5 years ago, and was it really taken in my neighborhood or in my city, or was it taken in a completely different place? And what you can do then is you can actually go to images.google.com, or these days you usually get this camera icon when you're on Google, and you can upload the image there. And then what happens is Google searches for that image online in the same way that it would search for your words or your key phrases. And then if you then see results popping up, and you can see, but this is actually the image you received via WhatsApp, and you can see that it's been appearing all over the internet over the past few years, then you immediately know, but okay, this is probably shared, this is shared out of context, and this is probably not happening in my neighborhood at the moment. This is an old photo that's resurfacing. So I'm not going to go into too much detail because we're pressed for time, but do go and check it out if you haven't done a reverse image search before. You can also do it on Microsoft Bing. There's platforms called Tinai and Yandex, and I have shared these resources with the Daily Maverick team, so they will also be sharing the links with you. And the next big question that we get all the time is, what about AI? Was the Pope really wearing this puffer jacket? So many of you will probably remember this image of the Pope in his very fancy puffer jacket, and it looked quite real. It looked very real, and this is when we started getting worried about AI. Of course, your first thoughts would probably be, but why would he be wearing that? But it was done so well that I think, some people were really caught out. The good news about AI is, although technology is improving and it is getting more difficult to recognize AI-generated visuals, there are still a few things that AI struggles with, and that's details. So if you have a closer look, and that's another tip, always zoom in as much as possible. But if you zoomed in on this image of the Pope, you'll see that there's something very odd about his glasses. It's almost as if there's no proper frame, or the shadows are weird. And it's almost melting into his face. You'll also see here that his hands, there's no real detail there. You can't really see what's going on or what exactly he's holding in his hand. And then the cross around his neck is not the one that he would usually be wearing. And you can also see that it's only attached by one string, which is a bit odd. So if you zoom in, you're likely to pick up on these details. And how we usually refer to this at Africa Tech, one of my colleagues came up with this as inside clues and outside clues. When you look at an AI generated image, and then you also apply to a certain extent with other images and videos. But some of the inside clues, so clues in the visual itself that you can have a closer look at, is accessories. Look at things like mismatched earrings and other detail. Backgrounds are usually quite odd with AI-generated images. There might be some melting shapes or people, or the patterns might not make sense. Then body parts, very, very important. Look for missing fingers. In some AI-generated images, we still see people with 6 fingers. And it's quite easy to miss if you don't pay attention. Mismatched eyes, ears that look blurry or completely different are sometimes an indication that it was generated by AI. Patterns on small objects like device buttons on remotes, name tags, a person's teeth. Zoom in on those details to see if there's something odd looking. And then also textures, we've touched on that when we looked at the Pope's glasses. So, you know, when skin appears very smooth, the glasses look as if they're melting into the face. Any kind of unnatural, too smooth looking kind of image you should be suspicious of. Okay, so once you've recognized some of these inside clues, then you will basically handle it in the same way that you would handle another image that you think was used in the wrong context. So ask yourself, what is it trying to make me feel or think? It's back to the emotions. Is it making me angry? You know, does this person have a specific, you know, aim by creating and sharing this, or the person who shared it? What else can you find on the internet? What other information can you find? What are news sources saying? And then also, very important, and we're back at the cross-referencing. How does it compare with other verified photos and videos of the same person or event? So when you see that image of the Pope, go and look at other images of the Pope. Go and look at other videos of the Pope to see if they are similar. And then one other clue that's actually, I'm jumping around a bit. One other inside clue for videos, of course, is to have a close look at the mouth to see if the lip movement and what is said are whether that's in sync. And then another giveaway when you look at a video is when there's only movement in the face, but the person is completely still. So their shoulders are completely still, stays in the same position in a very unnatural way. So those are all clues that you can be on the lookout for. Okay, so we've spoken about the importance of being responsible digital citizens. Kavisha and Rebecca had both touched on that when we started. But what do you do if you suspect that you're looking at false information and you're just not sure? So besides asking yourself all these questions that I was referring to and following all the advice that we've given you, you can also report false information to organizations like Africa Check. So we currently have a page on our website, the South Africa Election Information Hub, and it basically contains all our fact checks related to the elections and related to political parties at the moment. And you can actually submit a claim if you go to that page on our website. You can also report it with Kavisha and her team at the Campaign on Digital Ethics. And then Media Monitoring Africa has a platform during the elections. It's called Real 411. And you can also report any false information that you do come across online there. They will also look into it. So there are several ways in which you can help us address the problem or make us aware, at least, of the false information that's doing the rounds. Another way of making us aware of potentially false information and also playing your role in curbing the spread of false information online is by reporting posts that you see on social media that you suspect is false, by reporting that on the platform. The example that we're looking at here was a post that was reported on Facebook. So what you can do if you are on Facebook, and it works similarly on some other social media platforms, you can click on these 3 dots there, and then you can choose to report the post, and you can indicate it as false information. Okay. What happens in this case, so say for instance, a large number of people reports this post as potentially false, especially if it can be harmful to the public, then what we do as Africa Check, because we're part of the International Fact-Checking Network, we have access to a database where these posts are reported on Meta, and then we can actually fact-check that and publish a fact-checking report on that. And then social media users will get a warning when they come across that post that this post was false, and they can actually read the fact check. So they do get a warning on that then. What you can also do, because a lot of false information spreads on WhatsApp, so Africa Check has a WhatsApp line called Join WhatsApp on WhatsApp. It's also, part of it is also a podcast that we release every second week. But the reason we created WhatsApp on WhatsApp was because we didn't know, as fact checkers, we didn't know what was spreading on WhatsApp, because it's much easier for us to see what's spreading on open social media platforms. And that's when we started this line, so that members of the public who receive something via WhatsApp and they're not sure whether it's true or not, can actually send that WhatsApp to us. And then we will do fact checks on those that's reported by many people, or those posts that could be harmful. We also share fact checking tips on the WhatsApp line, and then this bi-weekly podcast. At the moment, we're really focusing on election misinformation and how the public can curb its spread. So to join it, you can simply add the number on your screen, 082-709-3527, as a WhatsApp contact, and just send us a message that you'd like to join, and then you'll be added to the group, and you'll get these regular updates. Okay, before I wrap up and hand over to Rebecca, who will take us through the questions. Quickly, back to the quiz quickly. I'm not sure if all the poll questions all of them were sent out. I have the results here in front of me on WhatsApp. So let's see how you did. So the first one was the video allegedly showing Mozambicans registering to vote in the South African election. And you did very well there. 75% of you said that it's a real video, but wrong context. 1% said yes, it's legit, and 24% were not sure. The answer is that it is a real video, but it was shared in the wrong context. So what actually happened here is these the people in the video are Mozambican citizens, and they were registering in South Africa for the Mozambican elections in order to vote in Mozambique later this year. So they weren't registering to vote in the South African elections. One of the signs that you could look at is the logo on the guy's shirt is of the equivalent of the IEC in Mozambique, and the printed out documents that you could see in the video was also from Mozambique. There was no indication that it was South African documents. And in South Africa, we also don't vote with a voting card, and he was mentioning a voting card. The next one was the video of Joe Biden. So 1% of you said it was real, 96% of you said it was AI generated, and 3% said it was real, but it lacks context. So the right answer is it was AI generated. One of the giveaways here is actually if you look at this watermark, this actually tells you that it was AI generated by a tool called tryparrotai.com. So that was indeed not a real video. Biden didn't say this. It was completely AI generated. And then if you don't vote in South Africa's election, does your vote automatically go to the ruling party? This is a claim that's been spreading for years, and it comes to the fore every now and again. But it's actually a myth. Only official votes are counted. So your vote, if you don't vote, your vote can't be counted, and it can't go to the ruling party automatically. Okay, so well done on that. Most of you got the answers right. And if you didn't, I hope today's training session did help you to spot false information, or to be able to spot false information in future. Thanks so much. I'll now hand over to Rebecca. If you have any questions, please do pop them into the chat. Unfortunately, Kavisha and I don't have access to the chat, so if we look a bit confused, it's because we have to follow it on WhatsApp. So please do pop any questions in the chat, and we'd be happy to take them.
Karina, so I have been able to see some of the questions. And there was a question from Kim just wanting some clarity. She had used the Google reverse image search, and just wanted to find out that if her image wasn't then picked up by the Google search engine, what does that mean?
So if it wasn't picked up at all, it might be that it's a very recent image, and it might actually be that maybe you received it and it was shared in the right context. Because if it has appeared online before, especially when you do a Google search, you should get similar results, but you also have to be very sure that you couldn't find it at all, because it's not necessarily going to pop up in the first 5 results. Sometimes you'll have to go through pages and pages of results to get to the right answer, or to get to that specific image that you're looking for. So it might have to be that you have to look harder, and also resort to, or try use Microsoft Bing or TinEye, use some other search engines. But if you still can't find that image anywhere on the internet, then it might be an indication that it is actually a new image. And then you'll need to find out more about it. Then you can go to look at your news sources, see if there are any updates on what's happening in the area. But usually when you easily find an image and it has been appearing all over the internet, then that's usually one of your first signs that it's old in the first place, and probably used out of context.
Thanks, Karina. And then Antoinette has another question about, are there any digital tools, platforms, or AI tools in existence that she can submit a dodgy looking complaint to them to see if it's reliable or not? I'm just going to jump in there and you can add to it. From my knowledge, I don't think that there's an automated fact checker that can verify whether or not content is real. One of the problems in terms of AI at the moment is that the AI itself can't actually pick up content that is generated by machines. So to my knowledge, there's no automated fact-checking AI or tool that exists that will immediately be able to tell you if this is real or fake. I'm not sure if you know of one.
Yeah, so there are some tools, but they're not very sophisticated. They're still they're sort of trying to play catch up. So the AI technology is better than the tools, picking up on the AI. So definitely just to add on, Kavisha, so we do sometimes use some of these tools. I might have. I don't have it in front of me, but very big disclaimer, they're not reliable. They sometimes just pick up images that was generated by a certain AI platform. So you can never only use one tool to with certainty say that something was AI generated. So you might feed it into different tools, but then you'll also ask other questions. You'll look at what does your news sources say? Does anything look weird or unnatural in this image? If I do a reverse image search with this image that I think is AI generated, what results do I get? So there's no one tool to rely on to establish whether something was AI generated. It's a combination of tools and techniques that you'll need to use.
Fantastic. I see Rebecca's back to take us over the line.
I was wondering if we could finish off with a more abstract question I saw coming in from David Duplessis, which is that are there examples of misinformation having an actual impact on election outcomes? I imagine this is quite hard to test, but I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, it would be very hard to test because I'm just speaking from a general point of view, like we won't be able to say, okay, but this voter, when they were standing in the queue, this is actually the information that led them to, vote for a specific political party. So we can't really say with certainty, okay, but we could, look at information online and fact check and verify it and try to give people as much accurate information as possible and hope that they use that to base their decisions on.
I have a slightly different or just a bit more of a nuanced view on that one, Rebecca, is that I do think that there's been evidence, if you think about Brexit in the UK, where anti-immigrant sort of fake videos being used to stoke fears, where disinformation about how much money the UK is spending on the EU as opposed to that money being used in the National Health Service as a reason to why they should leave the European Union. And I do think that there are real world impacts in India. We've seen it as well around anti-Muslim targeting by the BJP and very coordinated with troll farms and bots, etc., etc. So I don't think you can say completely that the reason why a particular party won an election was because of disinformation, but we do know that it plays a key role in terms of swaying people in further polarizing spaces.
Which is obviously very frightening. Perhaps we should give the last word to the Safe Content Advocacy Network, who made the point during the discussion. Shouldn't we be advocating for a system that stops misinformation spreading in the first place, rather than having to plow all this time and resource into checking the facts, which I think is a perfectly valid point. Karina and Kavisha, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I hope for those of you watching that you have come away with a little bit of a better sense of how practically to deal with this scourge of misinformation online, and that you will also serve as kind of community educators and tell those crazy aunties who are spreading the memes and the rest of it exactly how to check their own sources and the rest of it. Thank you for joining Daily Maverick. Thank you to Africa Check, and everyone have a good day further.
Thanks so much.